Hey folks, it's Wednesday and this is my life. I was born in Seattle, Washington on January 31st, 1992. 21 months later, my brother Vinny was born in Redmond. We lived in Washington for about another year and a half before packing up and moving to Colorado, where I spent the rest of my childhood. I went to a Lutheran preschool and had lots of friends, my best friends of which being 3 boys: Matthew, Mitchell, and Vincent. Mitchell was my first kiss after the holiday parade of lights at the Pizza Hut. We were 5, so I don't put much stock into it. Appleton was where I went to elementary school. The second month of kindergarten, we welcomed a new student named Rachel, and when I discovered she'd moved in down the street from my grandparents, we became best friends and have maintained that friendship for over 15 years. Elementary school was weird for me. At the time, I was mostly happy. I didn't have many friends, so a lot of recesses I would spend sitting off to the side of the playground watching the other kids play. It wasn't a depressing thing, it was kind of like watching TV. I knew everyone's name, but very few people knew mine. I also had a bully named Zach, who tormented me until well into middle school. 6th grade is when my life fell apart for the first time. Most of my friends from elementary school, including Rachel, went to other middle schools around the valley, so I was completely alone. I went through puberty much earlier than most of the girls I knew, which only added to how much of a freak my natural nerdiness and overachieving attitude made me seem like. I had even less friends in middle school, so for the first year and a half, I spent my lunch period walking around the football field, talking to myself. This is when I started to get depressed, writing sad poems in my journal and listening to 3 Days Grace and Avril Lavigne. In 7th grade, I met a boy named Dylan, who was in my advanced math class and who played basketball every lunch period. I loved both math and basketball at that time, so one day I finally worked up the courage to ask him and his friends if I could play with them. They said yes, and so I started sitting with them at lunch and playing basketball with them after we ate. They didn't know my name for the first 2 weeks, but that didn't matter to me. I finally felt like I could belong. Of course, it being middle school and me being the only girl in a pack of jock boys wasn't the easiest series of events. In 8th grade, the group of boys started to rag on me more than I was willing to put up with, so I started hanging out with 2 girls I knew from the basketball and volleyball teams I was on, Brittany and Kenzie. They and their group of friends accepted me immediately, even though I was much quieter than the rest of them at first, and this is the group that I stayed with until I graduated. Mia and Kelly, 2 of the other girls in the group, were atheists, the first I'd ever met, and for the first time I questioned my long-held assumption about God. After a while, God didn't make much sense to me anymore, but that's a topic for another video. Suffice it to say, I relinquished my religious beliefs and since then have been agnostic. 8th grade was also when, for my 14th birthday, my dad bought me my own domain name, BrisOwnWorld.com. Kenzie moved away after 8th grade, and Brittany moved during our sophomore year in high school, though by that time I was a pretty established member of the group. But back to the beginning of high school. I got my first boyfriend in March of my freshman year. His name was Mike. That relationship was interesting, and after 2 months, I broke it off after we'd broken up twice already for a few days at a time because I realized that I liked the idea of having a boyfriend more than I actually liked Mike. He didn't talk to me for a year, but eventually we started talking again, and we've stayed in touch ever since. After I broke up with Mike, I started dating a boy named Cody, who I'd known since I was in 3rd grade and whose father was my favorite elementary school teacher. Cody and I dated all of our sophomore year of high school, but after a year and a month, I broke it off because I just wasn't happy anymore. Again, I found that I liked the idea of my boyfriend more than I liked my boyfriend, and that wasn't fair to either of us. A lot of this stemmed because I had very low self-esteem from being bullied and from kind of looking like a freak my whole life, and so when a boy liked me, like Mike or Cody, I got really excited. But of course, being excited about someone liking you and actually liking that person back are 2 different things. Right after that, I met Sean on Facebook. I'll go into that more when we talk about internet relationships, but long story short, it was essentially a long-distance relationship that ended and rekindled itself multiple times over the course of the next few years. Breaking the pattern, I was never the one to call it off during this time, so whenever Sean stopped being interested in me, which was often, I was completely emotionally wrecked, and by the time my junior year of high school started, I was having panic attacks consistently. Some of my really close friends had decided around this time to break all connection to me without warning, and others started being incredibly mean, and because Sean had recently broken it off with me in a really devastating way, I was not in a good place. My junior year of high school was one of the worst years of my life, but It was also one of the best because I joined speech and debate. Speech and debate has been my constant companion ever since. Besides writing, it was the first thing I was really good at, and it was the first activity where I was earning trophies for more than just participation. Through speech, I've met some of my best friends, and even though some of them are no longer in my life, I wouldn't take back those memories for anything. My senior year of high school marked the beginning of a project on my website called Brie 2.0, in which I intended on blogging once a day for a year in order to find myself. Junior year had left me a shell of my former self, and I'd been going to therapy after a very embarrassing and very concerning mental breakdown in front of my parents. So I needed a project. A week after I finished with therapy, which was about a week before a national qualifying speech tournament and 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, my parents announced that they were separating. If I thought my life was ending when I started middle school, it was nothing to the fallout of my parents' divorce. For so long, I measured marital and life success by my parents' relationship, and now it was crumbling down around us as if none of the 21 years had mattered. This was a really tough time in my life, and the rest of 2010 was pretty not fun as a result. That year, the group of friends I'd had since middle school fell away through a series of bridge-burning incidents that we're all to blame for, and one of my best friends, Craig, who'd been my neighbor in Colorado for as long as I could remember, stopped talking to me. I still don't know why. That summer, we'd gone to the first ever VidCon together after I'd gone to Paris with my grandparents for graduation. College started just as Brie 2.0 ended, and at first, I wasn't sure where I fit in. I was taking all core classes, I was 800 miles away from anything I've ever known, and didn't have many friends outside of Ellen, who I'd met on a pre-orientation rock climbing trip. For a while, I strongly considered dropping out, but I'm glad I didn't. College has been good for me. I've met incredible people, had crazy adventures, traveled the world, won 2 national novel writing months, started dating an amazing guy, and learned so much about myself and the world. What's that old cliche? This is the first day of the rest of my life? Yeah, that sounds about right. Laya, I'll see you tomorrow.